Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for today's webinar. I know it might be the morning for some of you, so good morning. It might be the afternoon for some of you, so good afternoon. Today, we are going to be talking about the 8 tips to maximize the 2024 charitable donation tax deadline extension. Today, we have Nicole Danesi, Senior Manager of Strategic Communications and Brand at Canada Helps, as well as Matt Fitch, Senior Manager Account Development at Canada Helps, to walk you through the ins and outs of this donation tax deadline extension. I know there's been a lot of confusion, a lot of different types of reporting, so we're going to demystify all of that for you and give you some practical steps to take advantage of it, because this is a huge opportunity. But first, we wanted to acknowledge that our team at Canada Helps is grateful to have the opportunity to meet and work on the many Indigenous homelands across the land that we share in Canada. As settlers on this land, it is important that we acknowledge that our Vancouver offices are located on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people. The Montreal offices are located on the Kanien'kehá:ka Mohawk territory, and the land on which we operate in Toronto is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We want to express our respect for the territories we reside in and honor the diverse Indigenous peoples who have lived and worked on this land historically and presently. We, the staff and leadership at Canada Helps, are committed to being active participants in reconciliation. We are committed to continuing to amplify Indigenous voices, learning how our work affects Indigenous people. Now, a few housekeeping items on our end. If you are having any trouble hearing us, there's a few things that you can try. First, obviously, to turn your computer volume all the way up. If that doesn't work, you can click on the sound check under your audio in the GoToWebinar panel, select the speaker tab, and then turn the volume on the speaker to the far right to the maximum volume. And hopefully you'll be able to hear us then. And last item, you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. So if you have any questions, type them into the question log at any time. I will be monitoring those questions, and this will be good for the Q&A portion at the end as well. I'll make sure that those questions get in front of these panelists and presenters. So with that, I will pass it off to Matt.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you, folks, for joining. It's been said that there are often only 2 guarantees in life: death and taxes. But that was a new guarantee actually now with this deadline. So after weeks of uncertainty plaguing both charities and Canadians, we are really happy that we have the guidance from the CRA around this 2024 extended tax deadline. Before we get started, though, we want to extend a sincere thank you. Thank you for spending the time with us. Thank you for investing in this learning. And thank you for investing in the important work that you do each and every day. We hope that the insights that we share today will help you stay ahead of trends and remain nimble when it comes to your operations and your fundraising strategy. The practical application, we hope, of these easy-to-use tools should demonstrate how easy it is to get started and stay up to date. Also wanted to highlight what our intentions are for this call. Over the next hour, we want you to hopefully leave with 2 key takeaways. First, we are here to ensure that you leverage the immediate opportunity in front of you. The new 2024 charitable tax deadline is here to benefit your organization. Let's take advantage of what's in front of us. Secondly, in the uncertain world that we are living in, it is extremely important, I would say now more than ever, to ensure that you are actively working to future-proof your charity, to ensure that you can have the fundraising infrastructure in place to weather any storm that comes. Ultimately, what this means, we're trying to assess risk, we're trying to mitigate risk, we're trying to build redundancies and plans to ensure that your organization can respond to the unexpected. Charities have had to respond to these types of things before. Overnight, we've seen shifts in fundraising due to COVID. Over the last few years, we've been responding and feeling the impacts of inflation and the high costs of living. More acutely, we were recently impacted greatly by the Canada Post strike. And now as the economy is facing looming tariffs and a potential recession, charities have to be more light on their feet to be able to pivot and respond to anything thrown in our direction.
So with that, it leaves us here on February 6th when we're recording this and live for all of the 500 attendees. We're really excited to have you here today, so thank you. But we have this opportunity when it comes to the extended 2024 charitable tax deadline. And we wanted to first go ahead and share the fine print. So before we dive into the tips, we wanted to provide an overview as to what has led here today. As a recap, there was an announcement made, excuse me, by the federal Liberal government on December 30th, which announced that they were intending to propose legislation that would extend the tax deadline for 2024 for charitable donations from the standard December 31st to February 28th. And the key thing was that it was intended legislation. Fast forward a couple of weeks, in January, excuse me, we got word that, of course, Justin Trudeau was proroguing government, and it is almost certain with news from other opposition leaders that there likely will be a non-confidence vote when Parliament returns in March. And it really put into question what this meant for the legislation, what should charities do, and what should Canadians do when it comes to filing their 2024 income tax this year, and of course, your charitable donations. So now, on January 23rd, we were really pleased to get clear guidance from the Canada Revenue Agency that confirmed that we will be moving forward, that they will be moving forward to apply the proposed legislation to extend that 2024 charitable tax deadline to February 28th. And I know that's why you are all here today, to understand sort of the ins and outs and also what you can do in the next 3 weeks. And this ultimately means that Canadians who make a donation from January 1st until, again, February 28th of this year can choose to claim those charitable tax credits on either their 2024 or 2025 personal income tax filings. It is very important, however, to note a couple of nuances to this legislation. This only covers cash donations or those transferred by check, credit card, money order, or electronic payments. And this does not include donations of securities, gifts in kind, payroll deductions, or bequests from individuals who passed away after 2024. And my colleague Phil posted in the chat the link to all of the CRA details. If there's any other details that you are curious about, we are suggesting that you go to the CRA's website for those details. So with that lay of the land set, we want to grab your coffee or maybe your tea or your water, pull out your notebooks, and we want to walk you through some ideas for 8 different tips as to what your charity, like Matt said, can do right now to leverage this really unique opportunity. But also, there's a couple of tips that we'll get to closer to the end of the presentation that really highlight how do you navigate an uncertain year and some of the uncertainties, and also reduce some of the risks that a lot of charities have experienced during the Canada Post strike, during COVID, and other challenges that come up. So Matt and I will be your fundraising partners and go over these tips, and we're hoping that they will be tangible tidbits of information that you can take back to your teams and apply. Now, before we dive in, I want to remind everyone to place their questions into the chat. We'll be leaving some time at the end to go through those questions, but also in the spirit of community and learning, we want to hear from you. If you have another idea as to what you can do to leverage the next 3 weeks to maximize dollars raised that your charity is trying or considering trying, we would love for you to also add that in the chat, and we can share some of those examples later on in the presentation so we can learn from one another. I know I certainly, in developing this presentation, not only did Matt and I have ideas, but I reached out to other fundraisers that I know across the country to sort of understand what others are doing in this really unique opportunity. So we're going to jump into tip number 1. And tip number 1 may seem obvious, but I think it's a really important reminder here. The statement is certainly true. Knowledge is power. And while it's safe to say that your supporters want to give to your cause for altruistic purposes, they want to support your cause and they fundamentally believe in your cause, most of you here gathered today are, again, likely here to leverage this tax benefit to raise funds for your cause, which speaks to the power of the tax deadline incentive. And I can also just say that at Canada Helps, up until last year, actually, in all the years I've been here, which is close to 10 years at this point, December 31st has always been our biggest day of the year in terms of fundraising. This year, or last year, I should say, it was a very unique moment where Giving Tuesday just slightly more than a hair beat December 31st. That is probably another story for another webinar to sort of talk about Giving Tuesday, but it really speaks to how important December 31st is for so many different charities and how many Canadians are really, they leverage those tax incentives in order to make that donation. So at this time, it's really important to remind Canadians how much they can actually get back from their donation if they claim those tax credits on their tax personal income tax filings. And the Canadians, depending again on your location, your taxes owed, or other financial circumstances, you can get up to 49% back on your donation, which is significant, particularly during a rough economy or times when budgets may be a little bit tighter. So it's really important at this time to remind your supporters of this really fantastic incentive. And it's important to share this on social media, send this out as an email, add this to your website. Our customizable donation forms at Canada Helps allow you to insert customized messaging right at the top of those forms. Make sure you get it in there and really make sure that you're repeating this message so it really resonates with your supporters. The other really neat thing that we have at Canada Helps is our tax calculator. And I see Phil has also dropped that into the chat, so thank you. And this is a really great tool that you can send out to all of your supporters, and it allows your supporters to play around with understanding if they make a donation of this amount and they live in this province and file taxes in this province, what could that mean at tax time? So it's a really visible way of trying to understand the impact of those tax incentives. The other thing I'll mention is last year around this time, we conducted at Canada Helps an Ipsos poll, and we were asking Canadians if they were claiming tax credits if they made a donation. And only 56%, which granted is more than half of Canadians, were planning to make to claim charitable donations on their 2023 personal income tax return. So for all those other Canadians who made a donation but were not claiming them for whatever reason, it's another reminder not to forget that. And at Canada Helps, we pride ourselves making it really easy that you can go into your account, or there's a receipts tab right up at the top of the home page you can send your supporters to download all of your receipts in one shot. So it shouldn't be a headache.
So related to the 2024 charitable tax deadline, we've heard some anecdotes, actually, interestingly, from charities who are not moving forward with a campaign around this deadline extension. The belief there is that the donor would then have to communicate whether they would like the receipt issued for 2024 or 2025. We're here to debunk that. That is not the case. In 2025, as it pertains to Canada Helps, charitable tax receipts that are dated by February 28th, 2025 can be applied to your 2024 personal income taxes. Best part about this is our team at Canada Helps makes this easy, seamless, instant. Don't risk your time and energy on the tax receipts themselves and getting them out the door. Let Canada Helps bear that responsibility. Instead, you can focus your efforts on creative and strategic ways to fundraise, like using the customizable donation forms that Nicole mentioned previously. You get an instant tax receipt issued to your donor. We'll send reminders out when it comes to tax time, and you don't have to worry about anything.
And we should also note that in the CRA link that Phil popped into the chat a couple of minutes ago, it does highlight that if you receive a donation that was postmarked to, let's say, end of December 2024, and you received that and the envelope says that it's postmarked to 2024, CRA guidelines allow you to issue the tax receipt for that particular date that's postmarked, but there's more information on the CRA's website. So with that, I'm losing my voice all of a sudden because there's a lot to talk about. We're going to go on to tip number 2, and that is communicating impact. So it goes without saying that the Canada Post strike, for many charities, I spoke to some that were really relying on direct mail for their fundraising efforts. One organization, they were on the smaller side. They rely about 2% of their fundraising dollars on direct mail. So that's sort of on the smaller side. But then another organization I've spoken to relied on about 20 to 22% on direct mail. And that organization during the Canada Post strike was really scrambling to try to figure out what they were going to do to make up for that revenue that would potentially be lost if their supporters were not going to find other ways to make that donation. So our team at Canada Helps, we're actually going to be coming out with some data soon talking about the estimated impact that the Canada Post strike has had on charities and the sector. So stay tuned for that data, but it goes without saying that it significantly has had quite an impact for these organizations across the country. But related to this, communicating with your supporters has never been more important. You need to be in this 24/7 news world that we live in. It's really loud out there on social media, in my inbox, on television, radio, and other ways that we all consume media. And you need to sort of learn how to cut through that noise and be your own newsroom so you can transparently communicate with your supporters the who, what, when, where, and why. And why this is important is because some charities may not feel like they want to highlight how much they potentially lost from your charity's inability to send out print mail during the holiday season. But in fact, it is important to share this loss of funding with your supporters so your supporters know how they can help you. Your supporters care about your cause and your organization. And if you don't make them aware of challenges your organization is facing, there isn't a way for them really to understand those challenges and for them to be drawn in to support you in that way. So it's really important to share that information transparently. And of course, it depends on case by case scenarios, but we're really encouraging you to do that. In addition to, of course, sharing the impact that your organization wants to make or has made for your specific cause. The other thing I'll highlight is our 2024 giving report last year highlighted the fact that when we surveyed Canadians who had previously given to environment causes, the theme for that particular report really focused on environment, so that's why it was really specific there. 20% of former environment charity supporters said that they had stopped giving because they doubted the effectiveness of their gift. And that at its core is a communication issue. And Canadian charities need to really keep this in mind, that if your supporters don't know what's going on, they will not continue to come back and make that donation. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, we really want to hear from you. And this is a unique ask that we have for now getting close to 600 people on this webinar, which is quite exciting. And we, as I mentioned, are going to be coming out with some data publicly about the impact of the Canada Post strike on charities. And one of the things that we are seeking is stories from organizations that are willing to share the impact on their organization. So we'll drop in the chat either now or in a couple of minutes a Google form that we have available that we really love for you to fill out if you are comfortable in sharing this information with the team. We'll make sure to drop that in the chat in the next couple of minutes so that you have the ability to do that. Thank you. There it is. Okay. So with that, we're going to move on to tip number 3, and that is targeted campaign. So the next thing is arguably probably the most important tip that we are going to share in the next hour. So perhaps you want to take a screenshot of this slide. The slides will be sent afterwards. But this is something that you can really act on in the next 3 weeks while your organization still has this timely February 28th deadline to leverage to make additional revenue, raising funds from your supporters. So the idea here is targeting your donors who gave to your charity in November or December 2023 and who did not make a donation in your 2024 holiday campaign. One organization that I spoke to, Nova Scotia SPCA, yesterday, they actually said that they're going back even further from 2023, but also going back to, let's say, 2022 as well, pulling those lists and understanding perhaps there was a segment of donors who were going to mail in a check or cash and did not. And now that specific segment of donors needs to know about this deadline that has been shifted. I do want to give credit to the team at the Common Good Fundraising Agency and also Griffin Fundraising. They put together a webinar in early January that they talked about this really solid idea when it came to making sure that you're running a quick and dirty sort of "we missed you" campaign in order to target these supporters who could give to you right now. And these supporters should not be lost in the fundraising mix. And this is your opportune time in the next 3 weeks to download your report, which Matt will talk about in a second, and reach out to them, whether it's over the phone, whether it's email, or perhaps popping a direct mail piece into the mail.
Great, yeah. And as Nicole alluded to take quick action here, you need to target those donors. And I love hearing the sentiment from the SPCA that are willing to go back, multiple cycles to dig into that donor base. So what you can easily do today is you can log into your charity admin account, as you can see here, quickly navigate over to donation reports. You want to be able to pull a list of donors potentially who gave in November and December of 2023, but didn't get the opportunity to do that in 2024. There you go. You have a quick list now of folks that you can retarget. And then, hopefully you're reducing the barriers to getting folks in the door, and quick turnaround here with the 3 weeks.
Alrighty, so you downloaded your list, you listened to Matt, you downloaded your list, and now it's time to reach out to those supporters. So it may seem unrealistic that in 3 weeks, oh my goodness, I don't have a lot of time. Time is ticking. What am I going to do? It may feel really stressful, but diamonds are created under a sort of pressure or a rock. And this is an opportunity to come up with a really, shining campaign, let's say. So at this point, you may want to connect with your team and determine if you want to create a fundraising campaign over the next 3 weeks about this. And ideally, likely the best and most realistic option is to make this a digital campaign. So the best opportunity to do this is to set a realistic yet ambitious fundraising goal. You don't want to say you're going to raise $50 million in 3 weeks if you don't think that that is feasible. But you also want a goal that may keep you up at night slightly. Maybe not make you totally lose sleep, but it gets you excited, it gets your supporters excited, and it makes you want to try and hit that mark. I'll share an example in a moment, but there are some really great plugins that you can use if you're using MailChimp, for example. In order to use a thermometer, you can actually add a thermometer also to your customizable donation forms on Canada Help so that your supporters can see how far you are from that goal and where they can help you close that fundraising gap. And this allows you to really openly and transparently communicate as to what your needs are and how close you are to reaching that ultimate goal. One of the other things I've been noticing more and more, which I personally love, is whenever I get a fundraising email, I really love when organizations say that they need X number of supporters to contribute X number of dollars, and they would instantly reach their goal. So if an email says to me, Nicole, we need 20 donors to give $20, that is a very tangible number, and I can think that I'm potentially one of those 20 change makers wanting to make that donation to support the charity to make that fundraising goal. The other thing is, ideally, you are using a marketing email campaign like MailChimp to allow you to monitor open rates, click-through rates, revenue performance, so on and so forth. And if you are sending out multiple emails, you want to make sure that your open rates remain steady. You're not getting sort of tanking unsubscribe rates, or skyrocketing, I guess I should say, unsubscribe rates. You want to make sure that those metrics remain healthy and that you are adapting and pivoting to what you are seeing from your supporters as they are opening your emails. The other thing is urgency is quite a powerful tool, particularly during this February 28th tax deadline extension for charitable donations. You want to increase your email urgency as the deadline nears. So just like, I don't know about all of you, but if I get a sale from my favorite retailer, perhaps selling me shoes, and it says that there's only 24 hours left with the sale, I really want to buy those shoes now because I know that that will be gone in 24 hours time. So you want to take that same approach and say that there are 24 hours left, 5 hours left. There's only limited time to really drive that sense of urgency to get Canadians to give to your cause. And the last thing, Matt and I were talking yesterday about some of our perhaps pet peeves when receiving fundraising emails, but it's so important not to forget a clear call to action. Take a look at your emails, your fundraising emails, and ask yourself, have I included more than one link to the Donate Now button? Have you included a really clear button, a big, bold button, and I'll show you one in a second, where you really cannot miss it, so that your supporters can't miss it. This is one of those examples. So this was a Doctors Without Border example. And of course, in this example, there's a couple of things I want to call out. So there is a countdown timer. There's platforms like Sendrick that allow you to embed these into your fundraising email. You can't get it on this slide, but this actually counts down while it's live in your inbox. Unfortunately, the screenshot sort of removes that. They make their gift goal very clear. They're trying to raise $130,000. I cannot miss the deadline. It's very clear in front of me. They're trying to raise this by midnight on December 31st. And of course, they call out a match. So it's really clearly communicated, bold, and really in your face to make sure that you know, you're not missing any of that important information. The other thing I'll just mention is sort of a hot tip. I personally actually love getting fundraising emails because I love to see what other organizations are doing so that I can glean off of those tactics and tips. So I would recommend any fundraisers on this call, go search for large organizations, small organizations, organizations that may be fundraising but not within the charitable sector, for example, and see how they are asking for those funds, because there are other sectors out there that are doing things in a really interesting way that you can glean from and pull into your fundraising tactics. Alrighty, we're already at tip 5, 3 more to go after this. And again, please pop in your questions into the chat if you haven't already, or if any of these tips are resonating with you so far or sparking ideas, because we certainly want to hear this. So tip number 5 is about collecting contact information. Now, I acknowledge the fact that this tip doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with maximizing the charitable tax deadline, but we want you to assess the information you have with your donors. And the reason why I'm bringing this up today is because if you flash back to 2020, which I think most of us would not want to do, unfortunately, but when COVID struck, some charities realized that they didn't have contact details for their donors, such as their emails, for example. Perhaps they were a very in-person, person-to-person type of organization. Flash forward to the last holiday season when the Canada Post strike took place, and this really challenged some charities because some organizations only had names and home addresses of their supporters. So it's important to use this moment in time to assess the quality and quantity of information you have from your donors in terms of how you can get in contact with them and build redundancies in that contact information. So for example, maybe your supporter moves and doesn't tell you about their updated address. Do you have their email address or phone number to make sure you could get in touch with them if all of a sudden those direct mail appeals start bouncing back to you or are not being delivered, for example? One really fun way, and I'll show you an example of this in a second, is to plan a personalized survey to collect information from your supporters. So We'll show you also in a second how you can collect phone numbers from customizable donations. So again, you're building those communication redundancies among your supporters. But there's other ways you can kind of get insights in terms of why your supporters care about your cause, what they are interested in, so on and so forth. And you can ask questions around donation preferences or their giving intention to understand what caused them to give, why they care, and what potentially could get them to give more in the future. The other thing, this is sort of a wild card, but consider offering a prize for completion. So for example, if you have a great corporate partner that could give you a really great prize, ask to see if you could get a prize from that company to raffle off for your supporters who actually fill out your survey and hand over that personal information. Some supporters may not want to do this, and that is completely fine. That is up to them. But there are supporters who will willingly provide that information so that they can get more tailored communications about what they truly care about in whether it's their inbox, their mailbox, their social feeds, so on and so forth. So this is one example also I received. This is from Sunnybrook, so a pretty big hospital in Toronto, and they wanted to understand why I have supported them in the past and also why I'm on their mailing list. And they had sent out this survey to their supporters and asked questions regarding why do I support them, why do I care, and also interesting information that I want to receive in the future. You can try to make it fun, but make sure your ask is really clear.
I would say, while we advise not adding too much to your donation form, you don't want to make it too busy to create unnecessary friction. With our customizable donation forms, it is in the name, they're fully customizable, and they're also out of the box available in your charity account. Canada Helps actually allows you to add fields to collect certain information. So, as Nicole alluded to, the supporter's phone number. This allows you to get records and enrich your records that you have for your donors so that in times where maybe you're looking for that piece of information, that phone number, you can quickly and easily get in touch with your donor base. And it's easy as just turning on a field on our donation forms.
Awesome. So we're already at tip 6, and again, you listened to Matt, you turned on the phone number field on your customizable donation form, you're getting phone numbers. So now what do you do with them? And the idea here, and you can use this in the next 3 weeks ahead of the February 28th deadline, is pick up the phone and give an old-fashioned call to your supporters. So some charities may hesitate to do this. Perhaps you're feeling like you're bugging them, you don't know what to say, and there's different tactics and ways that you're able to use to reach out to your supporters. So one way you can use this as a phone campaign is to actually reach out to Canadians that gave to you in November and December 2024 to just simply say thank you. It's already February 6th. Hopefully you've already thanked your donors at this time. But using that opportunity to establish sort of a human-to-human connection to thank them for their donation, and perhaps you can also throw in the fact that perhaps as they're collecting their charitable and their personal income tax documentation to get ready for tax deadline, I want to be one of those people because I'm not yet personally organized for that just yet. I have a couple months to do that, thankfully. Perhaps they're considering how they can potentially offset some of those taxes owed, for example, and this could be a great opportunity to say, hey, thank you so much for making that donation in November and December last year. Just so you know, we have until February 28th in order to top up perhaps your donations. And some donors may take you up on that offer, especially at this point in time. A lot of Canadians are also thinking about RRSP contributions, for example. So it's sort of in that same light. You want to use your supporters and your stakeholders around you, board members, staff, volunteer, advisory committees, in order to pick up the phone and call. And you can also have some really fun interactions and learn about your supporters along the way. So you can add to your fundraising strategies and get some more insights in terms of your fundraising community around you, to build those connections, because we certainly don't want to treat our supporters like, open checkbooks, for example. We want to have that connection and that relationship, because fundraising is truly all about relationships. The other, on the flip side, after or perhaps before you call your donors in November and December to say thank you and give them that additional information, again, listening to Matt, pulling your donor list from 2023 and comparing it to 2024 to see perhaps donors who missed you. You can also give those donors a call and let them know that there is this extended deadline. They may not be aware, they may be confused, they may just simply not know. And again, knowledge is power, and this is an opportunity to share this with them. Alrighty, we're getting close, and I know we're getting questions, so we're gonna keep going, and hopefully this has been helpful so far. But tip number 7, again, this has to do, speaking to how Matt started off talking about uncertainty at the top of the presentation, but we wanted to talk about the long-term sustainability of your organization. There is a lot going on in the world. There is a lot that all of us are busy doing day after day, and it's sometimes important to really pause and reflect and understand the moment that we're all in, so that we can best prepare for things that may come up that we do not expect. So it is really critical for your organization to understand and assess where your revenue sources are coming from, to make sure, just like perhaps if you're into financial investments or finances in general, just like a personal financial investment portfolio, you need to make sure you diversify your investments and diversify your funding. So if in case one area sort of unexpectedly goes away or declines, there are other portfolios in your fundraising pie that can sort of make up the difference, hopefully. So, for example, the other thing to keep in mind, and we certainly hope that this does not happen and things will be resolved, but at this moment in time, Canada Post is actually still negotiating, and we could potentially be in a similar work stoppage situation if parties don't come to an agreement. And I believe that next deadline is around May. So, it is important to future-proof your charity by assessing how much money you take in from direct mail, how much money you take in from one-time donations or monthly donations, for example, how much you take in from events or peer-to-peer fundraising, or government or other sort of funding partners, for example, to assess that pie that you have. Especially, again, we are in a federal election year. If there's changes in government, for example, and changes in government priorities and funding, this also is another good opportunity to understand exactly where your dollars are coming from and what you can do in case one of those funding sources goes away. This is important also, again, another reference to the giving report, which I hope if you haven't read yet, you can certainly download it at canadahelps.org. But one of the trends that we've been reporting on year after year at Canada Helps is the fact that while at Canada Helps, and also across the sector, we have seen in an aggregate more dollars donated to registered charities, it's the number of Canadians who are actually making those donations that's been on the decline. And that's been on the decline for some time. Now, again, granted, the best way that we are able to measure this is tax receipt filings. So, and going back to the earlier point made, not everybody claims charitable tax donations on their personal income tax, but it's the best measurement that we have in order to assess how many Canadians are supporting registered charities year after year. And in 2010, to give you all a sense in terms of where we're at, 23% of Canadians stated that they claimed a charitable donation on their income tax, but by 2021, among those Canadians claiming tax receipts, that number dropped to 17%. So again, in this fundraising landscape that we're all working in, it's really important to diversify your revenue source. And one of those things that I wanted to highlight was monthly giving. I don't know about all of you, but I'm subscribed. I have multiple in my family and myself. I'm subscribed to different monthly giving platforms. I can't live without Spotify, for example. And we all have, Netflix subscriptions, or perhaps you have a Disney Plus subscription or other types of subscriptions that your household subscribes to. And monthly giving can be slotted in as one of those other subscriptions to a lot of Canadians. So at Canada Helps in 2024, we saw about a 6% lift in dollars raised from monthly giving. And this, again, is another potential opportunity if you have a monthly giving program to reach out to those monthly donors and say, hey, did you know that the February 28th deadline is a new extended deadline? And perhaps this is an opportunity, again, for them to assess, top up their gift, make their gift from $20 a month to $25 a month, or perhaps give you that sort of, we'll call it a bonus donation, for example, that is on top of your monthly donation that they give you. Monthly giving is really popular among younger Canadians specifically. We have some data around that in our 2022 giving report. And also, it's really important when we're talking about monthly donations to share the benefits that are the benefits that monthly donations give to your supporters. It allows them to stay in control of their budget. It allows them to budget throughout the year or end their donation or start their donation at any time. And it's also really important to let them know about how a monthly donation goes the extra mile to help your organization. And I think I can probably speak to all of us on this call that monthly donations allow your organization to budget effectively so that you can know the income coming in month after month in a sort of sustainable way. And you can best plan for your programs and services because of that really reliable funding.
Yeah, now we're going to share some really great examples. Of course, there's many we could share. But I love this one from Ellie's Place. I think it's a great example. You can see the different ways that you are able to support their organization. And you can see that they've highlighted, to Nicole's point, there's a growth opportunity there, the monthly donations on their Ways to Give page. So again, going back to the roots and the fundamentals here, it's important to list the different ways that your donors can support your organization. Make it seamless, make it easy. And we can take this other example as well, where you have the ability to go further with the level of customization on your customizable donation form. So you can actually even just highlight the monthly option for your donors to embrace. So I love this example. This is a great way to also, direct the behavior of the donors. I love this example, or this tip, I should say. I would say it's the art of start. Just get started. Don't strive for perfection. You have 3 weeks to leverage these tips to act on this unique opportunity in front of you to raise more for your cause. It's also important to keep in mind that some of the tips that we've provided today are going to help you future-proof the charity in order to, weather any challenges that come your way.
So we wanted to, oh, it doesn't look like my picture is coming up, but that is okay. There's always one technical difficulty. You can just picture what it potentially is. But we wanted to provide a bonus tip. And one of the things I wanted to state right off the top, reiterate, for those of you who maybe joined late, it is really important to note that securities are not included in the 2024 charitable tax deadline. It is only for cash donations. Again, more information on the Canada Revenue Agency website. But it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention this. So it's not something perhaps to focus on when it comes to tying in messaging for the February 28th extended deadline, because again, securities is not part of that legislation that the CRA is going to be applying, but security should be part of your future-proof strategy. And the reason why I say this today is because at Canada Helps, we continue to see tremendous growth in terms of securities donations that come through Canada Helps year after year. And last year, to give you a sense, we saw a 39% increase in dollars raised through securities donations in the calendar year last year, which is really mind-blowing growth. So it's really important. As a reminder, you don't need a broker or other sort of expensive process or technology to accept securities. You can start accepting it today. We're going to be giving you Matt's email address and QR code to book an appointment with him. And I know that Matt and his team would be really happy to share how you can get a donation form for securities set up. You could get it set it up in the next hour if you chose to. It only takes a couple seconds. So it's really important to embed your securities donation form on your website, link to it, make it known to your donors that you also accept securities, because you never know when you could get that big gift. Maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's 6 months from now. So it's important to sort of communicate that option as well.
Great, we've got another bonus tip for you, SWOT analysis. I think given how unpredictable the last few years have been, it's an excellent opportunity to conduct your SWOT analysis within your organization. Great way to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you are facing. This exercise can be highly invaluable. Your team should focus on trying to remove or reduce risk around elements that could go wrong. So for example, if in your analysis you're finding that a lot of your funding is coming from one particular source, say direct mail for your organization, in the event of another service disruption, this highlights what we've talked about previously around the diversifying of the different streams that you have of donations. So great way to uncover something that is maybe a blind spot. And then, in the future, you're protecting yourself and giving yourself the ability to contact your supporters in different ways. On the flip side, it's also a great way to see where your opportunities are to double down on things that are working really well, where your organization is succeeding. So how do you, redouble those efforts and drive further impact and development? Okay. Before we open it up to questions, which I see we're leaving in the chat, want to remind you all that we're here to help you as your charitable partner in crime here. So please, if you have any other tips or ideas that you'd love to share in the chat, we would love to benefit from the community that's on this call, and we can discuss those as well. You can reach Nicole or I via our emails. We also have a QR code that if you have your camera app on your phone, you can pull up. It will also translate into the post-webinar content that goes out to you. And yeah, we would love to book time. We'd love to hear your story. We'd love to hear what impact you'd like to drive some of your fundraising goals, and how we can help you support and convert more people before the February 28th deadline. Please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here. And as we had alluded to earlier on this call, there will be a Google form, that is important. We want to understand how the Canada Post strike has impacted your charity. Please make sure to also fill out this form, and our team would love to proactively reach out to you and hear that impact and that story, and hopefully we can amplify it so that we can all learn. And with that, I guess let's open up the chat.
Awesome. Okay, great. So tons of questions have been flowing in. So thank you everyone for submitting your questions. Doing my best to filter through them all. There are a lot of similar themes, but this one seems to be coming up the most. So if we could just clarify this one point and just definitively answer this one. Does the donor have to tell us what year to apply to the next tax receipt, or do we just receipt to 2025 now and they can use it for either year?
Matt, I can take that one. So in terms of let's say you make your supporter makes a donation through Canada Helps today, you would issue that the tax receipt A would be issued directly to the donor, so you don't need to worry about it. And that tax receipt would be stamped February 6th, 2025. So in that case, the donor is not going to tell you and cannot tell you, I want 2024 or 2025 on it. They don't have that ability to do that. What the donor has the option of doing is when they are going to go fill out their, do their taxes, they will have the choice to say, okay, I'm going to apply this to either my 2024 personal income tax, or they're going to wait until next year and leverage it for 2025. It's important for their supporters or your supporters to keep track. If you've already applied a 2024 tax credit, perhaps you don't want to double up is the point I'm trying to make. So your donors shouldn't be telling you one way or another. If you, for example, I mentioned this at the beginning, but if you, for example, received a mail donation, a check, for example, and it's post dated to on the envelope to 2024, there's CRA rules that you can read that you are allowed to issue that tax receipt for a check donation as long as that post date is what reflects in what matches on the receipt. So at the end of the day, really the only thing, just to reiterate, the donor has the choice to do is to, when they're filing their income tax, make that decision if it's 2024 or 2025.
Awesome, thanks. Another big theme in the questions is this one. How would you recommend handling monthly donors? We tend to receipt once a year at the end of the year for our monthly donors. Would it now make sense to provide a tax receipt for January and February 2025 and then another tax receipt at the end of the year?
That's a good question. So for our monthly donors at Canada Helps, if your monthly donors hopefully are going through Canada Helps, they have the ability to log into their account and download those receipts at any time, not even just now, but at the, at their fingertips, they have that receipt or that account. In that case, if the money has already hit your account for, let's say, January or February 2025, you could ask your donor then in that case if they want the tax receipt for those first 2 months, and then you would have to make sure that you're tracking that for the rest of the year and making sure that you issue the appropriate receipt at the end of the year. So for that case, it's a bit of a special case. I do suggest going to the Canada Revenue Agency website because they do have some FAQ information there.
Okay, awesome. Now we have a question. We have a few of these questions come up about ticketed events. If tickets to a future event in April are purchased before February 28th, are the tax receipts applicable in either 2024 or 2025?
Phil, can you repeat that the question one more time?
Sure, yeah. If tickets to a future event are purchased before February 28th, but the event happens after, uh, are the tax receipts applicable for 2024 as well?
I think for that case, I would suggest looking into the CRA data or the sort of the rules around that one. That one is a little bit more nuanced. So we're not sort of tax receipting experts in that sort of sense. So I would suggest going to the Canada Revenue Agency for that one.
Okay, great. This one is a bit of an accounting question. I'll throw it out there just in case this is something that we might be able to answer here. Our charity, let's say a charity had a revenue shortfall in 2024. If a donor decides to designate a January or February gift to 2024, can we account for that as 2024 revenue?
I think that one is a interesting question that I'm not sure we can sort of advise on specifically. I think maybe if you want to if the individual reaching out with that question, I'll throw it to Matt for a second. If they want to reach out to Matt via email, we can sort of take that offline and see how we can help on that one.
Awesome. Okay. And as a little peek behind the curtain, would either of you be able to shed some light on how Canada Helps is tackling this period? How are we going to, like the charity side of Canada Helps, how are we actually going to be issuing receipts, doing this whole thing during this 3-week sprint?
Well, for our team at Canada Helps, for the most part, it's business as usual because we have the technology to issue instant tax receipts and allow donors to download their receipts at any time for their donations. So again, if an individual makes a donation today, they have the ability to download that tax receipt and again, choose to claim that tax receipt on either their 2024 or 2025 tax receipt. So, we know that some organizations manually issue tax receipts. That's a bit of a trickier situation, but hopefully you're moving towards a customizable donation form so that we can do all that hard work for you.
Great. A bit more of a tactical question, and this might be more for Matt. Can I create a Canada Health report that shows the donors that gave in 2023 but not 2024?
Yes, yeah, you should be able to. When you're filtering out the list, you're going to be highlighting the year, and then I think you should be able to, I think, cross-reference against the 2024. But we can definitely flesh out the details in a bit more holistic way. Feel free to leverage, the calendar link and my email, and we can dive into that.
For sure, yeah.
Great
And
question.
anything, yeah, and anything specific to that, we might even be able to suggest a few other things that you could do with those reports. So I really do encourage booking some time with Matt, and we can walk you through that. Great. This one is for Nicole. What was the name of the app that you mentioned that can embed into donor communications that provides a countdown?
Yes, we used it at Canada Helps. I'm just going to get the spelling correctly. I think I said it really fast. 1 second. It's really easy to use. So it's called Sentric. So it's SENDTRIC. It's one word, and it provides email countdown timers.
Perfect, thank you. Another question, I think this one is to Nicole as well. Which survey software do people recommend using for simple surveys? Is SurveyMonkey still the best?
I can tell you that our team uses both SurveyMonkey and also Google Forms. There's a Typeform out there as well. There's a variety of other platforms, but those are 3 of sort of the big ones out there that are pretty easy to use.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. I am looking through a few other ones. We answered a bunch of them that are pretty similar to that. I'm just trying to see if the new ones come through. Oh, just clarification. Does the legislation still need to be passed by Parliament, or is this official?
So technically, yes, it needs to be passed. It's not technically passed and gone through all the steps, going back to my grade 10 sort of civics class here, has not gone through that process, particularly because government is prorogued at the moment. However, we are assured by the Canada Revenue Agency, which is the authority that is the one who governs and enforces, of course, all of our personal income tax filings, that they are honoring this legislation. So that is the ultimate certainty that we have that we can move forward with this, even though the ink hasn't been sort of stamped on the paper as of yet in terms of the actual formal legislation being passed at the moment.
Okay, great. I have another question. Well, I have a few questions here that are just kind of other use cases and examples that might be applicable to other people. So here's one. I'll throw at both of you. We received a mail donation check dated for December 2024 during the Christmas holidays. I only received it in January, and at the time I was not aware of the changes, so I issued a tax receipt for 2025. Is that correct? That situation and that action?
Again, I would suggest going back to the Canada Revenue Agency website. If the tax receipt's already been issued, I think that's probably best to go to the CRA and try to see if you're needing to take any other steps. Because, and I say this because on the CRA website they have an example that if there's a check that was mailed to you and it's post dated again December, let's say December 24th, 2024, you would be allowed to, you have to keep the envelope that had the post dated mark on there, and you'd be allowed to issue the receipt for that particular date. So because I don't want to give specific advice, particularly on this call, but I would suggest reaching out to either the CRA or a tax expert there.
Great. I have a question about giving summaries that charities provide donors at year end. Do you have any suggestions on how to tackle this at the end of 2025, given the changes here?
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting year, that's for sure, in terms of different nuances. But I think that for me, I think if I was doing anything of that nature, um, it is important perhaps to annotate that if you're providing a summary of how much how much the supporter donated to your cause or your organization, it's important to sort of annotate that perhaps the donor, reminding them that they may have applied a one-time gift that they made in February to the previous tax year. They can't move that forward. If they've already applied it, you can't double up on that in that sort of sense. So I think it's important to sort of just add that information perhaps to the summary, and allow the donor to sort of understand that nuance and keep track of that.
Great, great. And we can have one final question here. This one is about charities that want to do a bit more of a digital campaign but have struggled to get emails. They've requested, donors have denied. Any tips to overcome that obstacle?
I love this question actually, because I think that a lot of charities can feel that, and also I think it's an opportunity not to sort of stumble through this opportunity. So I think that one of the things to keep in mind is you want a healthy email list. And perhaps, Phil, this is maybe a future webinar topic actually that we can spin off if there's interest from our listeners here. But you want to make sure that your email list is really healthy. And if individuals do not want emails from you, believe it or not, I would actually say that that is okay for them not to be on your list. You want people to actively open and engage. And that is okay sometimes when people actually unsubscribe. There could be a variety of reasons. Perhaps they moved out of the area and they're no longer in your community, and for that reason your content isn't as applicable anymore. There could be other really fun ways to try to get emails and collect emails, again abiding by CASL laws specifically, and that is the Canadian anti-spam legislation. I haven't had my full coffee yet today, so I hope I got that acronym correct. But you want to make sure that you're abiding by that CASL legislation. But perhaps things we've tried at Canada Helps, for example, is to publish quizzes, for example, and that is a really fun, low barrier way to collect donor information. So for example, going back to the question regarding survey platforms, if you wanted to create a really simple SurveyMonkey quiz or a Typeform quiz or Google form quiz, and it allows you to educate your supporters or people that are interested in your cause about whatever you want to teach them about and illuminate sort of educational opportunities, you can ask for their email and allow them to consent to be opted in. And I can bet that if you try to do that, and you allow your supporters to opt into your email list, you may have really keen supporters that want to hear from you because they've gone through that extra step of, going through a quiz to learn about your cause, for example. So, I would say try different ways. There are a lot of really good digital marketing tips out there. If you send me an email, I can try to help provide you with some guidance there. But I think that there are different ways to build up that email list.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Amazing tips, amazing tips. So we are a bit over time. So just to respect everybody's time, we are going to wrap it up here. But not to worry, we have captured every single one of your questions here in the chat. We will have access to them in the back end. We'll take time on our side to look through all the questions to make sure that they were answered, and we will compile something and send it out to all of the registrants and attendees so that you have all those answers, all those questions answered. We will also be sending out a recording of this along with the slides, so you'll have all the information that you need. But your best resource will be Nicole and Matt here, so feel free to reach out to them with the contact information that we gave. A big thank you to Nicole and to Matt for your time and expertise, and thank you to all of you for attending. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.